Well, let's turn to politics of the day. A big day for potentially future Chancellor Rachel Reeves. She's across a lot of the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Let's get the thoughts of former Chief of Staff to Nadhim Zahawi, that is James Price, who joins us in the studio. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Look, she's had a tough job over the last 4 weeks or so, trying to get her spreadsheets in order after Jeremy Hunt blew a hole in all of that with his non-dom shock announcement. So what have they come up with to try and pledge and fund a lot of the pledges they've made towards the NHS and schools?
So there's a few different bits and bobs going on here with Rachel Reeves. As you said, in the budget recently, Jeremy Hunt closed this idea of non-dom, so this idea that you can not be taxed on earnings that you don't have outside the United Kingdom. The idea of this whole regime is to make sure that very wealthy people can come into the UK, can spend lots of money here, can invest here, can set up their businesses here, safe in the knowledge that they're not going to be taxed on things that aren't happening outside the UK. I think it's a great system. Some people don't like it because it's lots of rich people coming in here, but actually for a long time it's meant lots of people coming
I've read it being described as a sort of colonial hangover, which is always the ultimate insult, isn't it, in the modern world. But as you say, the French did away with it, and then guess what? All those wealthy people moved to London.
Exactly.
So there is that fear that that exodus could happen. But Jeremy Hunt's just taken the view, you know what, I'm just going to blow a hole in their finances anyway.
Right, exactly right, because this was a big Labour idea, so the Tories have gone along and stolen it. So Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, has had to work out a few other bits and bobs. So one of these things is going to be closing some of the loopholes that she says exists in what the Conservatives have suggested. Other taxes, I think, coming in to help fund the NHS. The problem is that it's so impossible to actually be able to work out how much this stuff will actually raise. You can always say, oh, well, it's going to raise X many pounds if you look at it in what you call a static way. But if you start looking at these things in what economists will call in a dynamic way, which is to say, well, you have this effect here, and then it will have this effect and this effect all the way down the line, because people's behaviour changes when incentives change and when other things change, you can't ever know how much this will raise. Which is why in the 1980s, when taxes went down, actually the amount of tax money that came in went up, because people stopped trying to hide their money, they stopped paying for expensive accountants and all these sorts of things.
But the National Audit Office have recently published figures saying £6 billion a year could be recovered through an effort on tax avoidance specifically. So they've obviously decided this is going to raise them quite a lot of money to help them with these big pledges.
Yeah, but again, I think with these things, it's about this sort of headline figure. I think that the IFS, trading these different bodies back at you, have said, well, we just don't really know. I think that there are two ways you can do this. You can throw more money at the problem, so you have HMRC hiring more people to investigate these things, or you could massively simplify the tax code. The tax code in Hong Kong, we're talking about colonial hangovers, it's about 130 pages or something. Here, 30-something thousand pages. It's incredibly complicated. So if you're a great big business or a super wealthy person, you can pay for an accountant who will help you move pots of money here and there and change things in different years, stuff that the rest of us can't have. And, of course, that's all just then a dead weight loss, which is money that, therefore, you're not putting on building your business or looking after your family. So if we cut these taxes, if we simplify everything, it stops being worth a while for people to hide this money around.
The irony, I suppose, in all of this about talking about tax avoidance is the pressure remains full square, doesn't it, on Angela Rayner, who, by some, is being accused of tax avoidance or capital gains. And, of course, she denies this, but Keir Starmer coming out saying, look, he thinks it would be inappropriate to see her legal advice. But now the chairman of the Conservative Party saying, actually, this is going to tarnish your reputation, Keir Starmer. You need to take a stronger position on this. What do you think?
It's really difficult, isn't it? One bit of me wants to say, well, look, what happens in politicians' private lives is a private matter.
Well, you did advise Nadhim Zahawi. So
right. Well, but
so
then you say, well, hang on a minute, is it worth having this person sticking around? So either you say, look, there's zero tolerance and everybody in politics has to be absolutely whiter than white.
Well,
right,
I think if you're coming out and announcing a package today which is going after people who are avoiding tax, and then you're saying, well, you know what, we're going to just, she's from the north as one of the excuses, or, well, nobody's whiter than white. Well, how on earth can they put that out as a policy? It's double standard, it's hypocrisy.
Absolutely, and I think one defence was that she was a woman as well, which is a kind of a ridiculous kind of soft bigotry of low expectations on these sorts of things. So either you take that every politician is whiter than white, well, all of your viewers will know that that isn't true, or do we say, well, hang on a minute, nobody's perfect, but is this person worth what they bring? So in the case of my old boss, Nadhim Zahawi, the guy ran the vaccine rollout, saved tens of thousands of lives, ran the Queen's funeral, right, and therefore whatever other complicated things may have been happening, I think it's worth having that guy at the top of public life. What is Angela Rayner most famous for? All I can remember is her shouting scum at her opponents across the House of Commons.
Well, there we go.